To all of you for coming along here to the Workspace leather market venue. It did used to be a leather market, probably the smelliest place in medieval England. Not anymore, of course. Anyway, today we've had sessions of workshops and consultations looking at innovation and R&D, trying to help lots of different businesses innovate and invest. And that's really the subject of this evening, all right? And it's in the context, and I'm going to test you out here. How many people have had a read of the new UK industrial strategy? That's 3 or 4. Okay. My background's in tech, all right, and used to run a very big tech research business, and we are very focused on working in Korea. I always remember back in about 1998, 99, the Korean government, South Korean government, this is not, Kim's bunch, they put together an industrial strategy which was so detailed. It had things like growth percentages for the country in telecoms. It was extraordinary. And I've got to say, I've never seen anything like that in the UK. So this is like the first full-blown industrial strategy which has appeared. All right, so you can go download it. It's kind of lost in the sort of Brexit, cloud which sits everywhere at the moment, but it's actually a really important document because the UK really struggles with productivity. And interestingly, I think we see ourselves as quite a big tech hub in London in particular, but if you look at the figures for the UK as a whole, we're one of the worst performers of the European Union in terms of R&D investment, for example. All right, about 1.5% of our GDP goes into research and development nationally. Germany and France around 2.5%. All right, so actually, we do lag in this sort of area. But in that context, this evening is a chance to have an open discussion, informed discussion, I think, around kind of, partly where are we at the moment? So if you're an innovative small business, how can you invest? What's the resources to invest? How do you grow your business, innovatively and access different kinds of support? And it's a chance for this panel we've pulled together to focus in on that. And just to explain this evening, we're on Facebook, all right, so this is being recorded. So no swearing in the room, please. First 35 minutes or so is going to be panel discussion, and I'll introduce our chair in a second, Steve Folwell. And after that, it's the chance for everyone else to chip in, have their say, all right? But the team we've got up here, and Steve will do the detailed introductions, are really there to sort of look at things from the perspective of early stage innovative businesses. Both from the business side, but also from some of the advisors who really specialise in this space. And I'm delighted that Steve Folwell, who's the Chief Executive of LOVESPACE Group, who are a really significant player now in the storage space, disruptive approach to what they do in the market, really innovative. And I grabbed Steve about 18 months ago, right, to talk at another event, it's a bit similar to this, about his experience of crowdfunding. And it just happened that we managed to time this innovatively with when they were doing round 3 of their crowdfunding. And it was live on the day we were doing it. It was open. And amazingly, in the discussion, someone in the room listening to Steve decided to invest on the spot through their mobile phone app, straight into, who was it using, Crowdcube? So that was, we've never got any commission on that, but...
I think it was a tenner.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Steve now, all right, to introduce the rest of the panel. And just to say, we will wrap up the formal bit about 8 o'clock, all right? Some more food and drink, and we can stay in this lovely space until around about 8:30, all right? So thank you very much. Steve.
Terrific. Thank you, Chris. Welcome to our audience on Facebook Live. Those who are tweeting, no longer very innovative, hashtag IFSeminar. As Chris says, it'll be about 35 minutes of Q&A with this esteemed, very innovative panel, and then we'll throw it over to the floor. So I'm going to go down the line, do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to ask each of our panelists an opening question. So let's start with Isabel Vantakira, CEO and founder of Immersive Rehab, which is an extraordinarily interesting VR company in the healthcare space. I'm joined by Oliver Woolley, who's founder and CEO of Envestors, and at the end, Virginia Driver, who's a partner at Page, White and Farrer, the IP firm. And the question I want to ask you all is, innovation often comes from somewhere and something. You're all doing and working in interesting fields. So how did you get into what you're doing? And then by way of then sort of further introduction, explain the business or what you're doing now.
The reason why I started Immersive Rehab is I had an accident myself about 7.5 years ago now. So I went through a really long rehab period. It was a work accident, and I had no balance for about 2 years. So I have balance, luckily, again today, but I went through a long rehab. And the way rehab was being done was it was often very frustrating, isolating. Access was not always ideal after a certain amount of time. And then some time went by, and I'm an engineer myself, biomedical engineer, having worked in healthcare and research for a long time. And I wanted to change that for people in the future to not have the same experience as I had. And aside from my own experience, I was looking then into stroke, spinal cord injury patients. I have a spinal injury myself, and I discovered incredible numbers in terms of recovery for those patients. That is very low because of lack of access and the way it's being done, basically, and also just the tools that they have. And so then some time went by, and then VR came on the market again about 2 years, or in the market like in the tech community, and then I kind of matched them together and started Immersive Rehab. So
terrific. And how long have you been going?
It's been amazing, and it's been an amazing journey. Definitely, it's hard to work in the. I love working in the health tech space and the digital health space. It's a very exciting, still a very new community. VR space is very collaborative, but it's very hard because VR itself is still evolving every day. So the technology has not been kind of adopted amongst you and me, like a toaster, for example, so that makes it hard. And then in the healthcare space, I'm linked. I have to go through quite a lot of regulations to get my product to market because it's a treatment, so it's a medical device. And that is very hard as a startup because running a trial, for example, is very costly. It delays the process compared to other businesses that can go to market in, let's say, 3 months. For a health tech company, it can be between 1 and 2 years, for example, and that makes it harder to raise funding, for example.
Right. So we'll talk through some of the challenges, I guess. Yes, in a moment.
Absolutely.
This is both about what people are doing that's interesting, but also all the things that block us from innovating. Oliver, you're the money.
Yes.
Tell us about how you started Envestors.
Thanks, Steve. Well, in 1986, I decided not to become an accountant, and I opened up a sandwich shop in Ludgate Hill, and I built up a catering business, which I sold in 1997. Then I made 3 investments of £25,000 each into exciting early-stage innovative companies. My track record was unblemished by success. In other words, all 3 of them went bust, and I thought there must be a better way of investing. So started Envestors, matching entrepreneurs with investors, in 2004 with a group of 30 of us. Now we've got around 3,000 sophisticated investors who registered with us. The minimum investment per investor per deal is £25,000. And the average deal size is around about £500,000 for early stage companies and around £2 million for later stage companies. And we do sort of 2 or 3 deals a month. And then about 3 years ago, we launched Envestors. So our marketing people said I have to do this so that
into the camera. Into the camera.
Yeah. Which we now it's a platform which we use ourselves, and we now white label and license this funding platform to other people, including lots of people in China who would do lots of innovative, who like to invest in exciting, innovative companies. So we're seeing a lot of interaction with China.
Great. I feel like I should have moved that on a bit earlier, but never mind. Virginia, do you want to tell us, I mean, you work with some of the most interesting and big names in tech. Can you want to tell us some of your experience in the patent arena?
Sure. So I got into patents because I had an engineering degree, but decided I didn't want to do something practical. I wanted to combine that engineering degree with law, English, something different. So I became a European patent attorney, which is a kind of hybrid of technology and lawyer. So it's a great place to be. You mentioned interesting clients. So we're talking here about UK innovation, but actually I think Skype is an extremely good answer to two questions, which is intellectual property protection valuable, and can you protect software? And these are two very common questions that I get asked regularly. Skype was established in 2003 by two Estonians, and in 2005, and some of you will remember this, it was purchased by eBay for the sum of $2.5 billion. At that stage, they had 3 patent applications, so 3 patents protecting their innovation. In 2011, they were purchased by Microsoft for $8.5 billion. Now, many things have changed in those 6 years, and I know you can use statistics to prove anything, but one thing that had changed was in that time period, we had written about 300 or 400 patents for Skype. So the portfolio that was purchased by Microsoft was significantly larger than the portfolio that they had at the time of the eBay purchase. And there was a great deal of discussion at the time about how some of those patents or the patent portfolio could have had some fuel to that value. So I think that answers the first question very readily. And the second question is, most of those patents were actually around software of some kind or another. And I'm really hoping to get some questions later from you about the kinds of software that you might be able to protect and add value with.
I'll definitely ask you that, because
Right.
we have no patents at LOVESPACE, we've got a lot of software.
Right.
So it's a question that's on my mind a fair amount. So innovation for the sake of it is as useful as a chocolate teapot, potentially, which would be a great innovation, but useless. Oliver, what, in your experience, the things that come across your desk, how many are there because of some great innovation, and what marks the good ones out from the also-rans?
So we get around about 100 or so proposals a month. And we're very excited by innovation. So product and service innovation and technology is really what we like to look at. And out of that 100 or so, we'll end up doing 2 to 3 deals. So there's quite a big attrition rate. We had, what we don't like is, or not particularly keen on, is when people have come up with a system or technology which they've patented, and they've spent a lot of money on the patent matters, but actually it's almost a solution looking for a problem, and the commercial reality behind it doesn't really stack up. So it doesn't really stack up as a business. So, for example, we had this person recently who patented this magnifying glass which went on the inside of fish aquaria, and so that you could identify fin rot in your goldfish. And he said there are 50 million fish tanks in the world, and this one's going to be great. We said, well, so what do? Do you move it around? He said, no, you just have it there and you wait for the fish to find it. Hopefully you can, so there wasn't much of a commercial rationale behind it. So much as we love entrepreneurs, and it needs to make commercial sense.
Looks like you missed that one. And same sort of question for you, Virginia. How much is really new? I mean, the world of patents, a lot of it is about proving that something is novel. But how much, if you really step back, how much of the stuff that you see is kind of brand new to market innovation?
Well, it's a very interesting question, actually, following from what Oliver's just said, a very pertinent one, because to be fair, nearly everything we get through the door is new. And some of it is very new. It's actually quite rare that we have to say, actually, we think that's likely to have been done before, and we're going to turn you away on that basis alone. There are searches you can do, and we sometimes do those searches, which are sensible things to do, but most of it's new. The issue really is, and the questions we ask is, why do you want to protect this? Where is the value in that innovation? And where is the value from the patent that you're going to pay me to get for you? So I can get you a patent for this, almost certainly. Most of the time, I could get a patent for the things that come through the door. But the real question is, why are you going to spend money on it? What are you going to do with it? And that leads into a discussion about the business plan, about the commercial likelihood of success, and then how does the patent, what patent should you get? And what kind of patent do you want that's best going to add to the value of the business, if any? Sometimes there are very good reasons not to file patent applications, not just money. There might be other reasons like confidentiality of information.
So really, you're both saying lots of innovation. The question is whether there's sort of commercial end to it.
Yeah, from a different perspective, yeah.
Isabel, have you looked at patents? Do you have patents?
I used to be a patent examiner.
Ah, there we go.
I worked on the other side of Virginia, but I think there's a time for everything, and too early, I like when you have just the idea and it hasn't been developed in a kind of and thought about, for example, commercialization, or I think just jumping on the patenting and putting a lot of money in the process, which is very expensive to go through all the stages. I think you have to, just do it at the right time. And I've been advising some startups in London on that as well. And I think there's a time for that. But I think it is important. It can, in some cases, in most cases, it's patents are really there, like for Skype, to attract investors or to be able to sell it for a high, because you protect a lot of things.
Demonstrate that you have that protection.
Exactly, and so big companies can really do that. But as a small company, if you have a patent, and let's say that I compete against Oculus, Facebook, and they infringe on my patent, as a small startup, it is impossible to fight against them. So it is, it's knowing kind of when and when is the right time.
Back to the previous question, I guess your innovation came from a personal experience, seeing a need and developed a bit like LOVESPACE actually. You see something that's not working, you develop for it. You're not an inventor in that sense. I mean, you may be inventing something to solve a problem. Maybe this question for the whole panel. If you think about innovation from those two sort of classical harebrained professor sort of stereotype, and then the entrepreneur looking to sort of fill the gap, in your experiences, which is the most likely to lead to success or major value creation? Or is there no pattern?
Well, I think actually this is why it's quite useful having these sorts of sessions, because I think out of the 100 or so we get a month, relatively few have good, strong patterns. And actually I think there needs to be an awareness-raising exercise to make entrepreneurs aware of the whole patent system. I mean, I know that there are actually lots of ways you can find out about it, but it's surprising how few of them have actually done it and done it properly. And the other issue is that what we also need to make sure is that they've been done and filed properly, and whether they're in the names of the individual or the company, which is a key issue for our investors.
Which should it be?
Always in the company. So
in the investment vehicle.
In the investment vehicle, whatever it is. And there are so many things to clarify. I mean, we work a bit with patent attorneys, but it's actually I'm surprised about how relatively few patent-protected technologies that we see on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I think following there, so I used to work in academia as well, and on both sides, basically as an academic, but also in strategy. And like in universities, for example, you have a lot of patents in a way, because like I used to work at Imperial, and they have a lot of drive to patent their innovations. But then for those groups, the next step is really hard, even though they might have patents, but to actually spin it out in a company, it blocks often that step, and then the innovation always stays within the university and it doesn't go out. While then as a startup, it's a bit different, but then you have not the umbrella, for example, of a big organization that supports you with the costs of getting the patents.
Great. I mean,
Could I echo something Oliver said about collaboration? Because you asked, harebrained professor versus someone filling a commercial need. In my experience, the successful companies have generally been the harebrained professor or his ilk, the kind of the brilliant mind or the innovator, and someone with his feet on the ground who understands money and finance. So that it's very often the pairing. I think of a case I wrote actually a very long time ago, back in 1989, which was the cornerstone patent on light-emitting diodes from polymers, which is now virtually every TV screen now uses those. And that was a professor at Cambridge University. But he was lucky because he collaborated with people who were much more commercially aware and drove that success. So I really think success is a lot more about collaboration than people sort of give credit to, I think.
It's very interesting. And of course, anyone know about Entrepreneurs First, that business?
Yeah.
Sort of successful innovation platform entirely predicated on that idea.
Yeah.
You bring those two sort of people together and then they find a way.
Also Innovate UK grants, for example.
Perfect bridge, because that was where I was going with the next question, which is, and by the way, on patents, plenty of time, lots of expertise on the panel for questions. The UK is an environment, London is an environment for innovation. Where can people go for assistance, whether it's financial advice, actual hard cash in the form of grants, tax? What's available in London and the UK to support innovation?
So you have obviously Innovate UK as a small business that supports collaboration between a small business that, for example, is looking for a lab space. You would collaborate with an academic institution, for example, you can go single, but you can also collaborate and get more money then. So that, I think, is a great first step prior to then maybe raising the £500,000 in an investment round to bridge that kind of time period to continue the development.
Did you use them? Did you use Innovate UK?
I am currently, but applying, so I haven't gotten any. But I used to work a lot with them.
Yeah.
So
sort of on the incubator effect sort of side.
I mean, it is a great. They work in various fields, and it's very open to. They're very open to giving advice and so on as well, and so it's very well structured. You have just to comply with some rules around budgeting, but it's as I said, it's because when you raise money, for example, you won't get it maybe instantly. So to be able to raise or to further develop and do tests, I think that's a great opportunity to look into. The European Commission as well, for example, they have the SME instruments, which is for small companies to apply for. So that's all grant-based. And then accelerator programs, I was part of an accelerator program myself, which was Bethnal Green Ventures, which is a Tech for Good accelerator program.
So there's quite a lot, I mean, in my experience as well, there's quite a lot at that very early stage if you're looking for sort of very small seed funding, grants. Particularly if you've got some tech or R&D behind it, there's quite a lot of support there. What about the sort of the next stage? And obviously, Oliver, you're sort of talking about probably next stage companies.
So I mean, at the early stage, Innovate UK, I think actually in the UK we should be proud of ourselves in terms of there is quite a bit of support. I mean, you have to go and look for it, but it's there. And ever since from Smart Awards and various other things, so there has been avenues for people who have got good, strong, innovative ideas. And Imperial College, which we're involved with, they're doing great things, and they have an enterprise lab. And a lot of the business schools have enterprise labs as well. And actually, just maybe think of the harebrained thing. So we're actually fundraising for Brompton Bicycles next week, and there is a classic example where it was a harebrained professor who came up with a ridiculous foldable bike, and is still obsessed to this day by this foldable bike. And you can go in and see the original one, but it was through other commercial people coming in, like Will Butler Adams, who actually really then turned it around into being a massive commercial success. So
that combination again.
You definitely need to have that combination. It wouldn't have been a commercial success had it not had someone like Will.
And what about the support on the kind of investment side? So we've got EIS, SEIS, VCT. So how well set up are we in the UK now?
Well, we're quite well set up. There is a bit of a gap still, and there's a bit of a frustration, I think, from entrepreneurs and investors in the bit that comes afterwards. Thankfully, we have a very good and benign tax system with EIS, the Enterprise Investment Scheme, and the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. So that's really, really helpful. And in the last budget, they doubled the amount that KIC, knowledge-intensive companies, which predominantly around tech and innovation, how much investors can get under EIS.
Do we know how they're going to be identified? Well, I've got one, obviously.
Yes. Well, I have to say, we're not sure yet, but most of the things we come across are knowledge or can be classified probably as knowledge-intensive companies. I think by the very nature that they're sort of young, growing, innovative companies. So we're not quite sure yet how that's going to be interpreted.
And in UK sort of heritage in legal system, good governance, our patent system, how well does it support, do you think?
So there's two aspects where I think the UK government actually does a very good job. One is in terms of information to inventors. The UK Intellectual Property Office itself has a very good website with a lot of helpful information and quite accurate information, whereas Google, on the other hand, doesn't. Google has a vast amount of quite misleading information when it comes to patent software, patents in particular. But the other aspect where the UK does well is in its legal system. So we sort of take for granted here that we have a very robust, very trustworthy, very reliable system for asserting patents. Well, in fact, law of any kind, but in particular looking at patents. And many people don't actually know there's a specialist court for small value cases in intellectual property just for that, called the Enterprise Court, which is part of the main legal system, but focused. I mean, you raised the point about, if you're a small company with a patent, you're sort of stuck. And but actually, there is that route, and judges very tightly control the cost in that forum. And I think it's something actually not to take for granted, because in many other countries, it's a bit of a song and dance, actually, asserting your intellectual property rights. So I think we should be proud here of UK governance in that legal respect.
And what about on the opposite end? So things that, you talked about a few of them earlier, actually, as well, things that stop you from innovating. What are the kind of things that are getting in your way?
Yeah, obviously, regulations, and that might be in a variety of fields, but then in particular in my case, within healthcare, it is just a long and expensive process to go through.
So give me sort of an example, because...
Yeah. So basically, prior to, while you're developing a product as well, there's a lot of costs that go in there, but then in this case, you can't commercialize your product because basically when people would use it, it's illegal. So you have to go through regulations and showing that it's safe to use and so on.
So all of the kind of healthcare trial-based regs.
Yeah.
Even as a startup, you've got the same standards as
absolutely,
a GSK,
and especially in digital health, it's a very new space in a way where, like for physical medical devices, like if you would have a pacemaker or like an implant type of thing, they have the different classes already. But for digital health, it's still very vague.
Yeah.
And they kind of just took the system. But for software that can be very low risk, in a way they don't want to take the risk, and you fall in the same high level category and you pay the same amount of money, the same amount of time that you have to go through. So that is definitely a challenge to go through. To kind of keep developing, and at the same time go through trying to go to market as well, because you need to do this validation first. It's like a chicken and the egg problem. You need money to do the validation, but you need validation to get the money. But it is a very rewarding space, so that keeps you going, obviously. And I think that is kind of just a slowing down process. It's not maybe blocking, but it's more a slower process than in many other fields. Obviously, yeah, like building a team as well. I think that is really important.
And talent generally, which
Yes.
is certainly something that I would
Yeah,
recognise
yeah.
as something which holds us back, you know, getting people on board quickly
Yeah.
enough with the right skills, particularly in tech and in marketing.
Yeah.
You find that's a similar challenge for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is really crucial to, well, just find the right people to be able to go along in your journey and to be committed to the business.
And how important is that when you're looking at investments? You know, so the team element of it, how critical is it?
So the team is very important. So we look at three things. We look at the quality of the management team, the quality of the business. In other words, is it solving a real big problem that people are prepared to pay for? And then the valuation, i.e. the price that you're being asked to buy in at. And will it then grow so it will then exit and make investors some money? So team is very key. There is a bit of a gap, as you were saying, this chicken and egg thing, which is undeniably there, which is makes things very difficult for certain innovative entrepreneurs. But I think what we've seen is where someone, a creator, has built a team, and particularly they might get one or two key endorsers or opinion leaders, or a very impressive chair of someone who's done something amazing in that field that you persuade is pretty awesome. And that's a great way to try and get, because they can bring investment as well as other team members and add credibility to the whole thing. So finding one of those is obviously
Like
a
an
great
advisory
help.
board.
Like an advisory board.
Official one,
Yeah.
Let me just come back as we're going to go to questions, so start thinking in about 3-4 minutes. So overall sort of question is, can the UK, Chris talked about the industrial strategy, which is a lot of very fine words, certainly. Can the UK sort of nail this idea that it's going to be the hotbed of innovation globally? Oliver?
So I think it is frustrating when you get a really good tech company which then leaves our shores and goes probably to the US, to the West Coast. It's much better if they can at least stay here and have their top go here and inward investment coming in. But I agree. I think I think the UK is a great place to innovate and to grow, and to scale to a certain extent. And if we can do more to support the scale-ups, and they've now got the Scale-Up Institute. So what I do like is the fact that the government is trying to do things to support and help and grow both the early stage companies as well as the scale-ups.
And sort of final question, I guess, to you. So when the sort of choice comes, will you stay here? So if the business grows, will it be a UK-based startup, or will you go take that money?
I'll follow the money.
You'll follow the money.
No, I mean, it is because I was in London that I started Immersive Rehab. Because when I moved to London first, I directly got immersed in the health tech space. I'm part of Health Tech Women UK, and having been in that environment here in London as well, just kind of motivated me even more. For entrepreneurs, it's a really great space. It's easy to meet people, to get in that mindset, and that really helps. Obviously, starting a project, whether it's a side project or an actual business. But then yes, within, and now I'm just general. I guess in health, like most investors that I met here in London, often come from a financial background in a lot of cases. Because of the city, obviously, it's a normal kind of trend, and that often makes that obviously they want to invest in businesses that they know, and that is fintech, e-commerce. And so as a health tech business, there's very few health investors, for example, in London. Food tech, for example, as well. I know some people are hardware. It's very hard to find money to scale up businesses. And so I think that there are some kind of gaps where if those would be filled in London, people would not go to Silicon Valley or would not go to China to get money, I think. So
I think that's a very positive note to finish on. I just echo entirely the point around the shape of the VC industry here really does shape what we do, and you can't solve the scale-up problem. You frankly can't solve the women in business entrepreneurship problem until you solve for VC, where the money is. Okay, great. Thank you so much to the panel. That was terrific. Let's hand over to you. Who's got a question or a thought? Prefer questions.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Global Giving. Hi. I'll start again for the microphone. I'm Rachel from Global Giving, a non-profit organisation. So I jumped in because I think my question sort of segues from what you were saying. I was interested in, does a business that thinks about social or ethical values have more, does it have more value to an investor? Are they looking for that? And my other cheeky extra question is, what innovations are you seeing that are not related to digital or tech?
Both great questions. Oliver, why don't you answer the question on the value?
So we get around about 30 to 40 new investors registering with us a month, and we meet them and we ask them, well, what are you interested in? And a running theme has been, we want to invest in things that's going to make the world a better place. And it's we've heard it so often. A lot of the investors, sadly, are sort of trying to get more diverse investor group. We've still got too many stale, male and pale sort of 56-year-old investors. But we're trying to get more diversity in our investor base. And then on the not-for-profit thing, the issue with the not-for-profit is you have to, is this an investment or is this a donation? And it has to be very different. And we get asked, in fact, we were asked if we invest in not-for-profit organisations, and we say we invest in loads of not-for-profit organisations. The only problem is that wasn't their intention. So that was, I can't remember the second.
Why don't I pass the second one on? So innovations that are not digitally led, which is, I think, is a great question.
So my field is largely computer science, computer architecture, software. So everything I see is hardcore in the tech arena. But I'm aware of a great deal of work being done in wet lab and bio. That which I don't know whether that's not digital tech. It's kind of its own tech, but there's a huge amount of work being done there. And I think also all the innovations that are coming along in different kinds of computers, like quantum computing, different semiconductors being used to manufacture, so you can capture different kinds of states. I mean, to me, that's sort of tech, but it's sort of not, because it's the next big wave of where the world is going in how we're going to be delivering all of this knowledge and stuff. So I'd say those are the two things I see on my periphery, but quantum computing I'll get involved in, but not the bio stuff. Well, that looks great to me.
I like, obviously you have google.org, but you probably know about them. They're the non-profits. They invest a lot of money in non-profit startups. So a friend of mine, his startup is called Wayfinder, and basically they got a lot of money to get their business started 5 years ago from google.org, which is, and I think companies are looking, and they have all these budgets, this CSR budgets basically, that you might be able to tap into. But the impact investment space is still very small, but it is definitely out there, and it's harder just to find the right people, I think, to invest in your business.
Thank you very much. Next question. Thank you very much. We bring the mic down here, please. Oh, sorry, I missed you. Sorry.
You can probably
off you go. No, we've got one out there.
There was talk of digital tech, biotech, wet tech. Does clean tech have a future?
Who wants to answer that one?
Well, I can take it from the area of innovation. So we have a couple of kind of green specialists, if you like, you know, a crossover between sort of chemists and material scientists in that sort of arena in our firm. And they've certainly seen a lot in terms of innovation. Whether it has a commercial future, I think I'm going to hand over to someone like Oliver on that one. But we're certainly seeing it in terms of the innovation, that's definitely there.
We see clean tech as one of the growth. We identified 5 growth sectors for 2018, and clean tech is one of them.
I was just going to come back to the point you made about the VC space being quite focused on like finance and sort of fintech products and things like that. And I was wondering how you would, because you said it's sort of quite calcified in that sense, and whether there are ways that you could make it broader, or whether that is sort of desirable from a perspective of if you know it's London was a destination for lots and lots of fintech companies to come out and thrive, whereas a broader sort of VC investor space might not necessarily attract people to the same degree.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So is focus a good thing? Because actually it gets all the right people together and you can only pick your winners, or actually should we be trying to diversify? I mean, crowdfunding is actually quite an interesting, we've been through it twice. And crowdfunding is quite an interesting alternative source of finance, particularly for those kind of niche interests where you can line the right people up. Is that, but the overall question, focus versus diversification, what do you think?
That's a very good question. I don't really have a very good answer to it. I think that with the fintech, well, first of all, VCs, I think, are very, they're very risk averse. They don't go in very early stage, or very, very rarely do they. So I also sit on the board of the UK Crowdfunding Association. Having been completely against crowdfunding about 3 years ago, I've now done a complete volte-face, and I now think actually it's an incredibly important option. It still has to be proven as a successful investors, and I think a lot of chickens are going to, and they realise that actually investors are not making any money out of crowd investing. But as a form, it's been very, very helpful. I must say, Steve, it'd be quite, we don't know much about you and how you got into that. So at some stage, you should say...
Ask you questions.
We should ask you, how did you get into what you do? And
it was a mistake. I was a corporate piece, so I worked at McKinsey, then The Guardian for 6-7 years, and was fed up of being disrupted in news. And then met a guy called Brett Acker, who was starting LOVESPACE storage business. He'd set up Streetcar, sold it to Zipcar. And so I joined him. I wasn't a big into storage. I thought about the same idea before, but it wasn't a kind of, oh my God, isn't storage just an awful industry, we need to fix it. I mean, frankly, I looked at the business model, thought it was terrific, and could actually see, I got quite excited about the whole train set, really, of, you know, the vans and the warehouse, and I've ended up driving pretty much for the whole of the first year. And it is, crowdfunding was a great experience for us because it opened us up to a lot of people, just as on-demand. On-demand was massive for VCs for a period. Then on-demand's gone a bit quiet, but people understand storage. It's very easy to understand. And you got a crowd of folk who really got behind the idea. So, you know, I'm quite a proponent of crowdfunding. We're about actually to return, for one investor who's doing a transfer, you know, a very real return on the first round. But you could probably count the likes of us on, even with one investor, on probably 2 hands who've sort of been through crowdfunding and have delivered real returns for investors at the moment. So I'm completely with you. I think, you know, the industry will have a little bit of a rethink as the investors in the crowd don't see the return.
And what was innovative about LOVESPACE compared to the Yellow bot?
We come to you. So Big Yellow is, you know, anyone use a Big Yellow or a self-storage unit? Are you one of the 100%? There you go. Well, you shouldn't come to us. We're cheaper, we're more convenient, and we're more flexible. So what's not to like? We come to you, basically. That's the main innovation. So come to you. You go online, tell us what you need to store, and we come and pick it up from you or from your unit. Look after it, got an inventory, and then whenever you want something back, you just call it down. So it's great for people who live in London, great for businesses, actually, increasingly e-commerce businesses who need to shift stuff around, and particularly good and very busy during the student summer when everyone's heading overseas. So that is when I'm almost certainly in the van in June. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Any other questions? We've still got time.
Sofa. Are you going over there?
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on. Yeah,
sorry.
we have.
What would you say distinguishes the entrepreneur or the investor from the gambler?
Oh, what a good question. Who wants to go with that? I'll think about that, so I'll pass it on.
Well, I think that a part of me thought that actually crowdfunding should be governed by the gambling regulation rather than the Financial Conduct Authority. That was in the old days.
You get 80% back.
Well, yes, exactly. So, and in fairness, I had Darren Westlake and Luke Lang came into our office 7 years ago talking about crowdfunding. And I said, really nice guys, it's never ever going to work. And I sort of patronisingly helped them along their way. And of course, in fairness, it's been great. But it's a very good question. It is a bit gambling. And what we're seeing now is that people who raise funding on any crowdfunding platform 2 years ago, and they invested £2,000 and they got various other treats or benefits or stuff like that, and it was a very happy thing because they're investing £2,000 and they're getting whatever product or service. But then what happens is that 2 or 3 years later they're thinking, actually, this is worth nothing really. I could have put that £2,000 in a SIP or into an ISA or something like that. And so what we're seeing a bit of is some of those early fans turning into actually frustrated investors who feel they've slightly been misled by this isn't a very good investment opportunity and perhaps it should be classified as gambling.
So that leads me on to a thought about the difference between entrepreneurs and investors, at least, as opposed to whether they're both gamblers. But to me, entrepreneurs, they're not gamblers. They have a dream. They're following a dream, and they will not be swayed. They're not betting on anything at all as they see it. Whereas I think investors, it is more about a calculated bet in many cases for early stage.
It's a perfect description. I think investors are definitely gamblers and should be educated gamblers. Yeah. Entrepreneurs are, they just don't realise they are. Right? They're on it and they absolutely have to believe.
They're on a vision, following a vision. Yeah.
We have time for more.
So an early stage startup has to make some intelligent choices between investing in a prototype, an idea, a platform, people, a team, advisors, patents, not patents. There's a whole raft of things, and every evening they'll be told the most important thing is enter in this blank. So I have a genuine question. How important are the team of advisors in terms of getting investment, sustaining the business, or are they, they needn't get too worked up about who's on the fringe of their business? So the ones I see succeed have very good advisors, but maybe it's the circle I operate in.
Well, I think having what we see a lot of is people who come with the business plan and they've got an awesome array of advisors. And then you look at it and actually they're not really involved at all. And they're friends or they've just lent their name and they're not involved in the slightest bit. So that is not a good thing. So if you are going to have, as we were talking about earlier, having someone who is generally and genuinely involved and can help support with fundraising and proof of concept and things like that is very, very good. I think the most important thing that we want to see is that someone who's actually gone out there and proven that there's some demand for this product or service, rather than sitting in a closed box developing this beautiful business plan. They've actually done whatever they possibly can to get something out there to prove that there's a market for it.
I'll just add to that I'd be a way better entrepreneur second time around than I was first, and therefore getting the right expertise around you is absolutely completely critical. It gives you a right leg up. And there's so many people who you see try and start something up, and it's just the confidence of actually going out and selling. I mean, the biggest thing I think holds back a lot of people who, and I was one of these sort of wannabe entrepreneurs, is that they go, I've got a great idea, I mustn't tell you about it. Or I mustn't go and test it until it's perfect. Someone on the West Coast to build a very successful archive storage business, so reasonably connected. I gave him a great sell about LOVESPACE, what we'd done. What should I send over the deck? He just said, sell. He said, if you're not selling now, why are you talking to me? Get selling, and it's true. I think sell, sell, sell. Whatever you've got, and it's, you know, it's not even making it, sell it before you got it. And we're starting up, I can officially announce it here today. We're starting up outside the UK, I won't tell you where, in the next couple of months. And even the guy who's been in, he's beginning now to build the business plan and got to get the tech perfect. I'm saying, no, just remember how we started. Go and sell, get that first customer. And you get the first customer, and it's sort of, if you don't ever get a first customer, you've not got a business. Where are you on that journey? I mean, it's different.
So
you need to get something.
Yeah, but actually, so I was 3 months in the accelerator program, and the first 2 months I was out. So I was going to hospitals. I met lots of physios, patients, and doing user research and understanding who I'm making it for and what they want. And then only the 3rd month I actually developed. So I had an idea in mind, but actually it was very much a co-creation process of having those conversations with the hospitals and the patients and people dealing with the conditions. And then I only developed a prototype. And then after that, I went back to the hospitals and went to test it with all the physios I had been in touch with and more. And then I shared a lot. I wasn't like, this is my, I thought, because with the sharing, that's basically how the prototype evolved as well in what it is today. And lots of interest from, like hospitals in the US, in Australia that contacted me, in Canada. But the problem is, again, I can't do anything until I have the regulations in place.
We didn't talk about that actually a bit. You know, innovation, in my experience, it doesn't happen it happens at the boundary somewhere between you, a customer, or you, a partner, or just over a coffee. And there is a bit of a contradiction between that and, I guess, patents, where, of course, technically, you're not meant to let anyone know about what your innovation is before it's patented. So, how big a deal is that really?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make a slightly different observation, but that's a very good question, because there is tension between selling your idea and protecting your idea, real tension. And your point about timing is very good, but I think a lot of companies get that timing wrong for one reason or another. But it does lead into the point I was going to make. You know, your question about advisors. I'm astonished by how many small companies approach us with no really concrete business plan. So they've already got some money, they've already had accountants on board, some of them have had lawyers on board to put legals together, but they haven't yet actually, what is my real business plan? And it's me asking a question, why do you want the patent? What's your business plan? Like, oh, well, you know, we've got innovation. Well, yes, but where does that fit into the scheme? And I kind of wish on, you know, your behalf, people advising these very small companies, that there was more of a centralized ability to somehow just get good business plans, training on business plans, you know, thinking you come with the innovation, one of the first things you think about, and it really is important, is the business plan. And then your accountants, your lawyers, your IP advisors could sort of then feed into that or help create it somehow. That's my observation.
Actually, just in reply to that, I've seen a number of clients come on board who have, which business plan would you like? The one for the investor. So my clients often have asked, which business plan do you mean when you ask for the business plan? Do you want the one for the investors? Yes. Do you want the one that we put with the EIS application? Or do you want the one that we haven't written yet, which is going to be the real one? Because I can't do that one yet. So, absolutely.
You should definitely do the real one. That is the way that we will wrap this up. So good practical advice. I want to thank all of you. Thank you for your attention, your questions, and thank you to the panel, Isabel, Oliver, and Virginia. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.